Amidst smiles and waves at Canada House, a storm brews behind palace walls. It was a picture-perfect afternoon, the kind of moment royal photographers live for. King Charles and Queen Camilla stepped out with poised elegance, greeting children. With warm smiles, exchanging polite words with dignitaries, and waving to cheering crowds like seasoned monarchs holding the nation's heart in their hands. The crowd was captivated, and for a fleeting moment, the world saw what it was meant to. See, a monarchy alive, united and thriving. But beneath the polished surface, behind the rehearsed smiles and royal protocol, something darker pulsed beneath the throne, an unspoken tension, a looming fracture threatening to tear through the core of the House of Windsor. As the king exchanged formalities at Canada House, insiders whispered of mounting pressure back home. Tensions weren't new, but the weight of them now was suffocating. Charles had always known that being sovereign meant balancing diplomacy with duty. But now, it demanded something far more fragile. Preserving the illusion of unity when his own sons were drifting further apart, and worse, when one of them might never return. The visit was officially a celebration, a symbol of continuity between Britain and the Commonwealth. Yet, the real performance wasn't on the itinerary. It was in the subtle glances, the forced laughter, the regal posture, concealing exhaustion and worry. This wasn't just another diplomatic outing. It was a carefully staged distraction, a visual message to the world that the monarchy, despite relentless scandals and growing public skepticism, remained strong and above reproach. But what the cameras didn't capture were the private phone calls, the anxious briefings, and the unexpected message that had arrived from Buckingham Palace just hours before an urgent update that would push Charles into a decision no father, no king ever hopes to make. Even among the excited crowd and fluttering flags, the monarch's composure betrayed a crack, a softness in the eyes, a hesitation in his voice. For those who truly knew Charles, it was clear he was somewhere else, deep in thought, burdened by something that hadn't yet been spoken aloud, but would soon shake the entire royal family to its core. The Canada House appearance was meant to be symbolic, a moment of pride, but history will remember it differently, not as a celebration, but as the day the mask began to slip, revealing a man caught between his crown and his children. But as the cameras flash and the crowd cheers, whispers of discord echo within the royal corridors. Behind closed doors, a silent battle for influence unfolds between the future king and the queen consort. While the world focuses on Charles's steady hand and Camilla's polished composure, few realize the growing rift quietly, stretching beneath the surface of the monarchy's gilded walls. Prince William, born and raised in the harsh spotlight of royal expectation, has always known he'd inherit more than just a crown. He'd inherit a legacy riddled with scandal, public distrust, and unresolved pain. And standing in the way of the future he envisions for the monarchy is the woman many believe never belonged on the throne, to begin with Queen Camilla. Their relationship has never been openly hostile, but it has always been complicated. William remembers everything. He remembers the chaos, the headlines, the heartbreak his mother endured. Camilla, for him, has never simply been his father's companion. She's the symbol of everything that fractured his childhood. And while the palace has spent years rewriting the narrative, painting Camilla as a loyal, steadying force beside King Charles, William has never been fully convinced. He plays the role, smiles for the cameras, nods when protocol demands, but behind the scenes, the tension is thick enough to stop a conversation mid-sentence. Camilla's rise within the royal ranks hasn't been quiet. In fact, it's been one of the most calculated ascents the modern monarchy has witnessed. From Duchess of Cornwall to Queen Consort, she's earned the trust of the king and the allegiance of a loyal faction within the palace. She's now more visible, more vocal, and more embedded in royal operations than ever before. And with Charles's health now a growing concern, her presence only grows stronger. Some even whisper that she's shaping decisions meant to be left to the heir himself. William, however, sees a different future. He doesn't want to preserve the monarchy as it is, he wants to transform it. Strip it of outdated formalities. Make it relatable, human, accountable. And in his eyes, Camilla represents the very opposite of that vision. Her influence, though subtle in public, is a looming shadow in every private meeting. And the more she asserts her role, the more William tightens his grip, on what he believes the monarchy should become. This isn't a shouting match or a war of words, it's a quiet war of ideology, fought through council decisions, subtle press, briefings, and who stands where during state functions. Camilla may have the king's ear, but William has the people's. And that, in this family, means everything. Their visions are irreconcilable, but the monarchy cannot afford division, not with the public already questioning its purpose. And so the struggle continues, quietly, relentlessly, just beneath the surface of royal smiles. As internal alliances shift, questions arise about the monarchy's direction and unity. The debate over Harry and Meghan's titles ignites discussions on tradition, duty, and identity. It began with a statement simple, direct, and seismic. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, declared they were stepping back from royal duties. Not stepping down entirely, not abandoning the family, but redefining their roles. Yet the palace and the public didn't hear nuance. They heard rejection. And what followed was a storm that exposed the monarchy's fragile hold on tradition in a world that no longer waits for protocol. In the weeks that followed their announcement, confusion turned to outrage. Headlines blasted Megxit across front pages. Tabloids painted Meghan as the manipulative outsider, and Harry was branded the rebel prince. But through the noise, one detail caused the most confusion. They kept their royal titles, Duke and Duchess. Still HRH, His and Her Royal Highness. Still part of the system they claimed to distance from. To some, it was hypocrisy. To others, it was survival. But to the monarchy, it was a growing liability wrapped in royal velvet. Public opinion split like glass under pressure. Supporters praised Harry and Meghan for prioritizing mental health and independence. Critics accused them of wanting privilege without responsibility. The titles became a symbol, a contradiction too glaring to ignore. If they weren't working royals, why still carry the honor? And more dangerously, what did it mean for the integrity of those who still remained in the royal fold, upholding tradition while their relatives rebranded royalty for Netflix? From the couple's perspective, the titles weren't about power. They were about identity. Harry was born into it. Meghan was pulled into it. And stripping those titles felt like erasing their connection not just to the crown, but to Harry's legacy, his late mother, and the institution that both shaped and shattered him. Yet, with every interview, every tell-all, every media deal that followed, the line between royal obligation and personal gain blurred further. For King Charles, the situation was more than a family matter. It was a constitutional riddle. Remove the titles and risk escalating the feud. Let them remain and face the perception that royal status can be used as a marketing tool. Either way, the crown loses something, either control or credibility. And for William, already strained by his brother's choices and Camilla's growing role, the pressure to act decisively loomed larger by the day. The Sussex question isn't just about two people. It's about what the monarchy stands for and what it fears becoming. A brand instead of a beacon. A show instead of a symbol. As more young royals step into the spotlight, the rules of engagement are being rewritten. And the line between public duty and private desire has never been more dangerous to walk. Amidst external controversies, internal challenges loom larger for the monarchy. Caught between tradition and transformation, King Charles faces decisions that will define his reign. He waited his entire life for the crown. Decades in the shadow of a queen who ruled with iron steadiness and unshakable presence. And now, as the weight of the monarchy finally rests on his shoulders, King Charles is learning that wearing the crown doesn't bring clarity, it brings choices. And none of them are easy. The royal family he leads is not the family it once was. Fractured by modern pressures, bruised by public scandal, and split between loyalty and resentment, it's a house that demands healing. But how do you lead a family and a nation when the two are tearing in different directions? Charles has become the reluctant referee in a royal game none of them truly signed up for. Between William's reformist vision and Harry's rebellion, from afar, between Camilla's controversial ascension and the ghost of Diana that still lingers in every public move, Charles finds himself in an impossible position. He's not just the king, he's the father trying to hold together sons who no longer speak. A husband defending a queen many never wanted, and a monarch expected to steady a ship in a world that questions its very purpose. Balancing his personal anguish with the rigidity of royal tradition has left Charles cornered. He cannot favor one son without alienating the other. He cannot address Camilla's growing power without undermining her public role. Every decision he makes ripples beyond palace walls into parliament, into public opinion, and into the future of the institution itself. And yet, doing nothing is not an option. The world is watching. The monarchy must evolve or risk crumbling. But evolution demands sacrifice. And Charles knows, whatever path he chooses, someone he loves will lose. The burden of legacy weighs heavier than the crown itself. Charles inherited not just a throne, but the lingering wounds of generations before him. A monarchy obsessed with appearance, cloaked in silence, and bound by archaic codes. But Charles, older, wiser, and scarred by decades of being misunderstood, is not his mother. He is not unshakable. He is human. And for once, that humanity may be his greatest threat or his greatest hope. He envisions a monarchy that is leaner, more transparent, more connected to the people it represents. But inside the palace, not everyone agrees. Reform means resistance. Every change risks alienating tradition-bound allies. Every modernization invites scrutiny. And Charles, already weakened by age and illness, must push forward with the knowledge that time is not on his side. Yet amidst the pressure, the one thing Charles cannot ignore is the emotional cost. The strain of watching his family unravel. The late-night thoughts of a legacy that could end in division rather than unity. The heartbreak of knowing that every choice he makes may sever the very bonds he hopes to restore. He is no longer the prince with idealistic dreams. He is the sovereign who must decide whether to protect the past or shape the future. As the king contemplates the path forward, his health adds urgency to these deliberations. Behind regal appearances, the monarch confronts a personal health battle with resilience. When news of King Charles's cancer diagnosis first emerged, it didn't come with fanfare or public dramatics. It was quiet, controlled. A brief palace statement that left more questions than answers. The public heard words like treatment, resumption of duties, and optimism, but few understood the gravity of what the king was truly facing. After a lifetime of waiting for the throne, Charles was met not with celebration, but with the cruel weight of mortality. And while the world expected strength, what lay beneath was a private struggle few could ever imagine. The timeline was unsettling. Just months after ascending the throne, Charles underwent a procedure for an enlarged prostate, seemingly minor, brushed off as routine. But behind closed doors, doctors had concerns. More tests followed, and then, in early 2024, the palace confirmed what insiders had been whispering. The king was battling cancer. They wouldn't reveal the type. They wouldn't offer details. But that silence said more than any press release ever could. This wasn't just about health. It was about control, about protecting an image of strength while navigating the most human of fears. Publicly, Charles remained composed. He smiled through engagements. He greeted crowds. He gave speeches with his usual calm conviction. But behind the scenes, he was a man on a strict medical schedule balancing chemotherapy with council meetings, side effects with state functions. And the toll was real. Fatigue, pain, isolation. Yet, in typical royal fashion, the palace wrapped it all in dignity, offering the world a carefully managed version of the truth. For a monarch already burdened with family fractures and public skepticism, the illness struck at the worst possible time. It raised uncomfortable comparisons to the final years of Queen Elizabeth, whose own declining health was shrouded in mystery. It echoed the rumors of bone cancer that surrounded her passing, and now, eerily, seemed to haunt her son's reign. Royal watchers began to question the stability of the monarchy. Could Charles lead while undergoing treatment? Would he have to step back, even temporarily? And if so, what would that mean for the line of succession? Inside the palace, the family's reactions were mixed, concern shadowed by tension. William, stoic and focused, quietly shouldered more responsibility. Harry, from across the Atlantic, reportedly reached out perhaps for reconciliation, perhaps for closure. And Camilla, for all the criticism she often faces, remained steadfast. beside her husband, shielding him from the outside storm while navigating her own growing role. Still, the British people responded with an unexpected warmth. There were letters, public well-wishes, a sense of collective empathy rarely extended to royalty. For a moment, Charles wasn't just king, he was a man facing an all-too-common fear. And in that vulnerability, he connected with a public that had long viewed the royals as untouchable. But resilience comes at a cost. As the king fought his private battle, the crown demanded appearances, diplomacy, continuity. And so, the public schedule resumed, even when the pain lingered, even when the strength faltered. While the king battles illness, the monarchy's public engagements continue, masking the underlying strains. In Ottawa, the king's presence symbolizes continuity, even as personal trials persist. It was a crisp, calculated step forward. King Charles, now marked by the quiet weight of both his illness and the fraying fabric of his family, arrived in Canada not as a patient or grieving father, but as a monarch. The visit was more than symbolic. It was a declaration. The crown still stands, even when the man beneath it is weathering a storm. The Canadian tour marked his 20th visit to the country, and yet never before had the stakes felt this high. Behind every handshake, every photo op, every moment of ceremony, there was a silent question hovering in the air. Can the monarchy still hold the Commonwealth together? The schedule was tightly orchestrated. A meeting with Governor-General Mary Simon, a formal greeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney, receptions filled with cultural displays, traditional honors, and cautious optimism. But beneath the protocol, Charles was listening. Canada, like many former colonies, is questioning its future ties to the crown. Republic debates have grown louder. Youth support for the monarchy has thinned. And Charles, aware of the shifting tides, approached the visit, not with royal entitlement, but with diplomatic precision. Queen Camilla's presence added an unexpected layer to the narrative. While her rise from mistress to monarch had long been met with resistance in Britain, here, on foreign soil, she was introduced into a new realm of legitimacy. Her induction into the Canadian Privy Council wasn't just a formality, it was a statement that Camilla was not just Charles's consort, but a political figure in her own right. Some called it a bold move, others a calculated one, but all agreed it was historic. The public watched closely. In major cities, crowds turned out in respectable numbers, waving flags and greeting the couple. But in quieter corners, protest. Signs called for constitutional reform. The monarchy, while still respected by some, now sits uneasily atop a generation more concerned with reconciliation, diversity, and independence. Charles, to his credit, did not shy away from these undercurrents. His speeches nodded to Indigenous partnerships, climate action, and the evolving nature of Commonwealth ties. Still, no words could erase the growing sentiment that the royal era may be nearing its twilight. And yet, this visit was not about securing the past. It was about buying time for the future. A chance to remind the world and the royal family that the crown is more than tradition. It is diplomacy in motion. It is soft power dressed in velvet. And for a king battling both personal and institutional uncertainty, this trip was an anchor in a sea of unpredictability. But even as Charles and Camilla moved through Canada with practiced grace, smiling for cameras and strengthening ties, another reality waited silently in the background, one not dressed in diplomacy or protocol. Yet, as the royal couple engages abroad, familial relationships remain strained at home. A casual conversation with a football legend sparks deeper questions about royal alliances. It was meant to be a light-hearted moment, a brief exchange between two public figures, captured amid the bustle of the royal visit. But when King Charles greeted David Beckham with a warm smile and a private word, the press didn't see a simple reunion. They saw a signal, a calculated gesture cloaked in familiarity. The former football icon, once one of the most recognized faces of Britain, had long been aligned with the monarchy, an unofficial ambassador of British pride. But this moment, this particular meeting, was different. It came at a time when the UV royal family was battling not enemies from outside, but fractures from within. The two spoke briefly. Beckham smiled. The king said something quietly, and Beckham nodded. Cameras caught just enough to ignite speculation, and not nearly enough to silence it. And then came the line spoken by Charles with a glint of familiarity. "You got it, didn't you?" Beckham laughed, leaned in, and the conversation ended. But for those who read between the lines, this wasn't just banter. It was theater, intentional, and layered with meaning. Within hours, tabloids spun their theories. Some suggested the interaction hinted at Beckham's growing involvement in the king's charitable foundation. Others wondered whether it was a subtle jab. After all, Beckham had once been rumored to be part of Prince Harry and Meghan's inner circle. That friendship, sources claim, had quietly dissolved. Now, here he was laughing with the king, standing not beside the exiled Duke of Sussex, but beside the institution Harry had chosen to walk away from. It wasn't just optics, it was alignment. In today's monarchy, appearances are messages. When royals share space with celebrities, they're not just creating headlines, they're shaping narratives. And in a world driven by perception, those narratives have consequences. Beckham's presence, charismatic, grounded, and beloved by the public, added a layer of relatability to the king's image. At a time when the monarchy is being challenged as outdated and elitist, what better face to stand beside than one forged by grit, sport, and humble beginnings? Still, the timing couldn't be ignored. The royal family's relationship with Harry was at an all-time low. Reconciliation efforts had stalled. And here was Charles, exchanging gifts and jokes with someone who once stood alongside Harry in support. Was this a coincidence? Or a quiet reinforcement that the monarchy moves on with or without the Duke? The public, as always, chose sides. Some viewed the encounter as charming and harmless. Others saw it as a strategic move, an endorsement, a distancing, a realignment of loyalties. In truth, it may have been all of those things, or none at all. But in the royal world, where silence is policy and symbolism is everything, even a smile can be a statement. As public engagements continue, the question remains, can the personal rifts within the family be healed? With internal divisions and external pressures, the monarchy stands at a pivotal juncture. For centuries, the British monarchy has endured wars, scandals, and revolutions not by sheer force, but by adaptation. It has survived by cloaking itself in tradition while subtly bending to the pulse of the public. But now, under King Charles's reign, the institution faces a reckoning more complicated than any before. This isn't just about heirs or scandals or who sits where at coronation dinners. It's about purpose, about whether the monarchy still fits into the fabric of a society that is questioning power, privilege, and legacy like never before. Internally, the cracks are undeniable. The bond between Charles and his sons, once seen as the monarchy's future, is frayed and uncertain. William, increasingly burdened by the role of heir, walks a tightrope between loyalty and reinvention. Harry, exiled by choice and consequence, stands firmly outside the fold, his absence both a wound and a warning. And while Camilla's position is solidified in title, public sentiment remains fragile. These aren't just personal rifts, they're symbols of a family and an institution struggling to redefine itself. And yet, in every challenge lies a crossroads. Reconciliation, though difficult, is not impossible. There are whispers within palace walls of back-channel efforts to reconnect. A tentative hand extended here, a softened comment there. But reconciliation cannot be performative. The public, once passive spectators, now demand authenticity. They are no longer satisfied with photo ops and palace statements. They want truth, vulnerability, real unity, not the illusion of it. If the monarchy cannot model healing within its own walls, how can it claim to represent the cohesion of a nation? Public opinion has become the monarchy's quiet kingmaker. Polls now weigh heavier than proclamations. The image of the royals is no longer shaped solely by tradition, but by trending topics, viral interviews, and evolving social values. Younger generations, increasingly detached from the institution, ask questions their grandparents never dared to voice. Why does the monarchy exist? What purpose does it serve? These are not whispers anymore. They're loud, growing, and impossible to ignore. And so, the path forward demands vision. A monarchy that survives must be one that listens, that reforms not for survival, but for relevance. Leaner, more transparent, and emotionally in tune with the people it claims to serve. William and Catherine may very well lead that charge, should the opportunity come sooner than expected. But even then, the echoes of past missteps and the shadows of unresolved conflict will follow them. For King Charles, this is the final chapter of a life defined by preparation and patience. His reign, though late, is deeply symbolic. It is the bridge between an era of silence and an age of accountability. Whether he is remembered as a monarch who clung to the past or one who dared to reshape it now rests on the decisions he makes in these fragile years. Only time will reveal whether the House of Windsor can weather the storms and emerge united. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.